Recently, Vicky and I have had to make some very serious life choices in preparation to help take care of Wyatt. It's a big day.
A very big day. This is my last day of work. Crazy. Last day of work coding. Let's say that.
What you doing there?
Wyatt's banana.
Due to circumstances out of anyone's control, Vicky and I are going to step up and try to help Billy take care of the baby.
I've already got his cartoon on.
We've all been through a lot, but I'd go through it all again 1,000 times over for my grandson. We've all been hoping and praying for the best, but Vicky and I have also been preparing for the worst case scenario as well. Although we have all been leaning heavily on our faith, we must still prepare and be ready to help out in case everything goes south. Inevitably in life, things are going to go wrong. And when you're dealing with a child's life, you have to be ready. You have to be prepared for the worst possible scenario. And so that's what our family has been doing. Vicky and I have been looking into private health insurance so that she can quit her job to help take care of the baby. Because keeping a toddler occupied is a full-time job. And Wyatt, much like his father and his grandfather, would rather be outside working in the shop.
Ready to go.
He gets so excited when I reach for the door handle to either go outside or go into the shop. And typically his papaw keeps plenty of things for him to do and has plenty of different ways to keep him entertained during the day. But it also means that papaw's going to have to come up with some ways of creating income to make up for what Vicky loses, plus our health insurance. That's one of the reasons why the side-by-side can't stay.
Here's your grandma.
Is it fun? Is it fun, Mr. Pook?
Oh, ball.
Oh, yeah, that's yours, but June took it.
Officially, today is Vicky's last day of work for Mount Carmel Health Systems. So Wyatt and I are going to be working together out in the shop and working on the driveway, while his grandma puts in the last few hours of her last shift. Once we had all our work done outside, Pookie and I went in the shop to check out some of the monster trucks and begin teaching Wyatt about remote control cars. But today isn't all about playtime. We've actually got some serious work we need to get done out in the shop once my help shows up. For today, I've called in some reinforcements to help me get the transmission pulled down out of the Biscayne. Now, it's been a little while since I worked on the Biscayne or had it in a video. The last time I had an opportunity to work on the car, I had taken it out on a test drive and found out the car has a little bit more power than I thought. But it also has a stubborn transmission problem. All right, so we're out here in the shop and old Uncle Buckwheat's back here pulling the transmission out of the Biscayne while I watch Mr. Pookie. I've been very blessed my entire life with a tight-knit family. My brothers and I were always raised up to look out for each other and do our very best to help out our friends and family whenever we can. So Vicky and I are going to do everything we can possibly do to help take care of Wyatt and keep Billy going so he can travel and race the rest of this winter like he'd planned to. And this weekend he plans on going to Bradenton for the World Series of Pro Mod race. I love you. I dropped the kids off at the airport in Port Columbus so they could fly back to Florida to race this weekend. While the kids will be in Florida racing, Vicky and I intend to stay home and help take care of Wyatt after we box up and load up all Vicky's computer equipment for her work and take it back to the hospital to turn it in. So how many years have you been coding?
20 years coding. Isn't that crazy?
13 of them in that office in the front of the house.
13, yeah, from home, from Mount Carmel.
For 10 hours a day, basically.
Pretty much.
We're turning in your equipment.
Yep. It feels weird.
Vicky had fully intended to retire from Mount Carmel Health Systems, but sometimes life throws you curveballs and you've got to learn to adapt and overcome.
To Cracker Barrel.
Cracker Barrel?
I'm celebrating with a breakfast.
Once we dropped off Vicky's computer equipment at the hospital, she wanted to go to Cracker Barrel for brunch. Of course, Mr. Wyatt was excited for brunch too. He likes to watch videos on Vicky's phone, and he also enjoys shopping sprees at Cracker Barrel, especially in the toy section. Today, he scored himself a rock-solid black and silver Z2869 Camaro, as well as a fresh box of vanilla wafers. So on day one of Vicky quitting her job, Mr. Wyatt is doing pretty well. Now Grandma has all the time she needs to spend with him playing outside so long as the weather's fit. And luckily, the weather today is nice enough for more than just swinging in the tree swing. I couldn't think of any better way to celebrate Vicky's first day off from work than firing up my monster truck and showing Mr. Pookie what carburetors and nitro are all about. This particular truck is one of my favorites. Although this thing is over 20 years old, and I haven't had it running for over a year, it fired right up and ran like it was running yesterday after charging up the receiver pack for the radio. Up until this point, Wyatt had just pushed this thing around on my workbench. He had no idea that this thing makes noise, smoke, and moves under its own power. This is an old modified team-associated Monster GT. The truck's been lifted, has bigger tires, all aluminum suspension and shocks, a 2-speed automatic transmission with reverse, and of course full-time 4-wheel drive. We managed to run a couple tanks of fuel through it before it was time to get back to work on more important things, like getting the double enclosed trailer ready to bring my Monte Carlo and the 55 Chevy home without either one of them being able to move under their own power. We need to get a winch put in that trailer so that we can pull these two cars without shoving on them and scratching them and denting them, and you know what I mean? I just don't want to be like that. I want to be able to just hook a cable to them and pull them up in there and not struggle. Since the weather is so nice today, Kenny and I decided to go run our errand in the Malibu. Over the last several days, it's rained quite a bit and washed all the salt off the roads. So I don't plan to waste any nice weather or nice road conditions that are readily available without a 1,000-mile drive to Florida. What are you doing, Kenny? A cart? We're just here for a freaking winch. Now, I've learned my lesson not to turn Kenny loose with my debit card at a Harbor Freight. If it was up to Kenny, we'd have a whole truckload of stuff to bring home. But for today, we're limited to the trunk space of the Malibu. Anyway, we loaded up everything that we thought we might need to get the trailer ready for tomorrow and loaded the Biscayne's transmission on the back of my truck. That way, first thing in the morning, I can be on my way down to the transmission shop with this transmission while Kenny's working on putting the winch in the trailer and getting everything ready to haul cars home. All right, good morning, everybody. It's Saturday morning, and we got this transmission loaded up yesterday afternoon for the Biscayne, and typically I would just take it to Dion up at Vickers, but Dion is extremely busy right now, and he also doesn't really care for this particular transmission. He doesn't like 700 R4s and 204Rs at all. He does not like messing with them. He does my 700s for me, but he would rather not. But anyway, the 204R is very finicky. According to everybody I've talked to about these transmissions, very finicky. And he mentioned that there's a guy down in Amelia who I know, we've raced with him for years. His name's Lonnie Dyers. He owns Extreme Automatics. And Lonnie's a big Buick guy. He has been for years. And the 204Rs were very common in Buick Grand Nationals. So Lonnie is very well versed in working on these transmissions, knows them inside and out. So I called Lonnie the other day and he said, well, there could be a multitude of things going on with this transmission, and some of them are definitely internal. And he said, you really need to pull a transmission out of it and just bring it down to me. Let me take it apart and see what's going on in it first before we end up chasing our tail trying to sort out a governor problem or a TV cable problem that may or may not be the problem. So we pulled the transmission out and we're going to take it down to Lonnie today and see what he has to say. I don't know if he's going to have time to take it apart right now on the spot, but I'm going to drop it off. Lonnie's going to take a look at it, go through it, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully he can find a smoking gun in this thing. Now, initially, when I bought this car, I didn't get to drive it myself. Dean Carnes took the car down to Sick Week and found out for himself that the transmission definitely has problems. After Sick Week, we brought the car back to Ohio, and Jeremy and I got started replacing the headers and sorting out the tune on the engine. The idle quality and the drivability of the car was much better. However, we still had problems getting the transmission to shift like it's supposed to. Unfortunately, the governor in this transmission is up inside the transmission pan. But despite my best efforts, trying to adjust a TV cable and make adjustments to the governor weren't working out. It seemed as though no matter what I did, I could never get this transmission to shift out of low gear at wide open throttle, regardless of how the TV cable was adjusted or what weights were in the governor. So today I'm making a 2.5-hour trip down near Cincinnati to drop the transmission off with Lonnie Dyers of Extreme Automatics. You see, Lonnie has a very good reputation with working with this specific transmission. From what research I've done, this transmission was very common in Buick Grand Nationals, and Lonnie himself has been into Buicks his entire life, but not just specifically Grand Nationals. What's happening, Lonnie? Be careful getting down off that thing. That's rough on an old guy. So you're the expert at these things.
Man, I wish I wasn't, but unfortunately.
According to Lonnie, almost 70% of his business revolves around the 204R transmission. So Lonnie, how did you get to be an expert on these transmissions?
I think it was 90 or 91. I was in the Buick Club, and I was racing a Grand National, and it was my daily driver. It was actually a T-Type. And I knocked one out 13 times in one summer. So, so after 13 times of pulling in and out of the car, I started getting pretty good at it. Yeah, like I said, it's a great little transmission. It's just real finicky, man. Everything has to be. If everything is perfect, it's probably one of the nicest driving overdrives there is. But everything has to be perfect, and that's really the only negative on the transmission. Is a lot of people who install them don't take the extra step to make sure that the geometry on the carburetor is correct, or corrected the geometry for the TV cable, and just the basics to make sure that the pressure and everything's right.
See, in my 700, I did away with that TV cable. I mean, I've still got one, but mine has a constant pressure valve body in it.
Yes.
So I just program the governor to shift it where I want for automatic mode. Yeah. And then when I shift it, it just shifts. It shifts pretty good. Like mine's really pretty decent transmission.
Yeah, oh no, yours works good. And you can do a 200 the same way. The only problem is a 200, the power flow is very similar to a 400. And so what happens is when you make a constant pressure like that and use the TV cable, they will absolutely kick your head off. And it's because we've done it before as well. And they just work better if you just take the time to set up the geometry. Like I'm going to come up and help you make sure the geometry is correct on your car.
Oh, you are?
Absolutely. Yeah, because
I didn't know you were planning on doing that.
I can do the best job in the world, but if the geometry is not right on the TV cable, it won't last. It just won't. So we'll come up and I'll bring bracketry, and we'll take your carburetor, we'll correct the geometry on it, we'll make it like a short stroke like a Grand National, and it'll work just like it does in Grand National.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, that sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah.
2 days.
Huh?
I kicked mine out in 2 days.
Yeah, if you miss them wrong, a lot of people will just buy, what they don't understand is the bracket that goes on the side of the carburetor that everybody sells, that doesn't correct the geometry, it just gets the TV cable hooked up. And with a carburetor, you have a really long stroke. And so what we need to do is we need to move the center line of the actual, the piece that holds the TV cable closer to the center so we can shorten it to around, it's about, in the transmission, it's actually 1.800. And that's what we needed to move in the transmission. And then it will be on the same geometry as a fuel injected car, and they'll work really, really well.
Okay.
And sometimes we can bolt it on and get by with it. Sometimes we may have to TIG it on. But
okay.
It's not, with a carburetor, it's not a problem. You just got to do it.
So what you were telling me was this thing may have an internal problem. Like if the drum doesn't stop turning, if the band doesn't stop the drum, it will not shift in a second?
Will not shift in a second. It's a progressive, it's set up, when you're automatic, it's progressive. So what happens is one gear stays on, another gear comes on, the other gear comes on, nothing releases. When it comes to the band to go into second gear, the transmission is in first. And so the band actually has to bite and stop the drum to be in second gear. If it doesn't stop the drum, it stays in first. And so what happened is a lot of people don't realize that the band's hurt. They will run them up and it'll go up to the rev limiter or higher than they're used to going. Doesn't stop the drum. They let off the gas and they feel it bump into second gear. Well, the reason it's bumping into second gear is because you are not applying the same amount of torque, so it can actually stop the drum to be in second.
Wow.
And when you drive them around at light throttle, they feel like they're fine.
Yeah, and this
As
one did.
As soon as you apply any power to it, I mean, sometimes even half throttle, they won't shift at all.
Really?
Because it's spinning, the drum, it can't stop the drum.
So we're just chasing our tail up there if that's the problem. And nothing
Correct.
we're ever going to do is going to fix this.
Never.
So this was the best option, just to go ahead and pull the transmission, bring it down here,
Right.
let you check it out. That way, because I have no idea what's in this transmission.
Right.
I really don't. I was told that it's got some billet parts in it and it was fully built, whatever that means. You know how that goes.
It's buddy, we deal with it all the time.
Yeah.
I deal with guys on drag transmissions in here, whether they're 200s or 400s, and they paid a lot of money for them, and they're basically nicely rebuilt junkyard transmissions. There's
Right.
nothing special with them at all. And the 200, unfortunately, is that the 200 and the 700 both are probably the most common transmission that people sell. They put performance clutches in them, and they call them performance transmissions, and they're just not. They're a stock transmission with an upgraded set of clutches, and that does not make for a performance
Right.
overdrive transmission.
I learned that the hard way when I was doing the 700R4 thing years ago. I can't tell you how many thousands of dollars I spent learning that lesson.
No, dude, they do it. It's just there's people in our industry that have a lot of integrity, and there's still some people out there that unfortunately don't.
Yeah, I understand.
But you know what? I'm not going to fault them because they don't know the difference. There's people who just don't know the difference between a performance transmission and slapping clutches in a transmission that are upgraded and they're calling it a race transmission. They don't. There's really a lot of that goes on.
And Dion gets that a lot when he hates being known for that 700 in my Malibu because people call him on the regular and he tries to talk them out of a 700R4 whenever possible.
There's nothing wrong with a 700, but I'll be honest. I mean, your application is working pretty damn good. I mean, I'm with him. I would typically, excuse me, lean towards a 200 4R way over a 700. It's a stronger transmission, and the gear ratios are better. It really is. But like I said, yours works excellent, and I never would have thought it. I can tell you that. I never would have thought, in a million years, I wouldn't have thought there was any way that the 700 would work as good. That's why I haven't wore you out to try to put a 200 in. It's working good.
You've been sitting back waiting for that thing to blow apart.
I remember talking to you in Edgewater one time. I said, man, Bill, why don't we put a 200 in that thing? And then I started following you racing it because when you guys were talking about it being a daily, I'm thinking he is not leaving that at the airport. He's not driving in the snow. It's not. I was a little bit of a naysayer, but and then I started thinking, man, usually you're out, you're racing it, and it's fast, and I'm thinking, man, I cannot believe that 700's hanging in there. And then I thought, you know what, that is the best 700 in the world I've ever seen. Because it really is.
It does. It works really good. I've got two of them, actually. Now, my first one was basically a stock 700R4.
Yeah.
And I broke the gear set in it because I broke the steering wheel at the time. I didn't have a roll bar in it.
Right.
And that damn thing's hard to hang on to. Like, it goes like 138, 60 foot on the motor.
Oh, yeah.
Back then with that motor combination and that transmission. And so the bench seat wouldn't hold me up, and I'd fall in the back seat. Well, I broke the steering wheel launching it down there at Edgewater, and I accidentally let off the gas and got back on it, and I rocked that gear set, and that's all it took.
That's all it takes. The crazy part is when you mentioned about the seat. One of the first, my first T-type, I didn't have a cage in it, and I was just starting to get into the height around the 1080 range. And I remember I had a trans brake in a 204. We were playing with it at the time, trying to make a trans brake for a 200. And I remember letting the button go, and the seat back broke, and I'm laying in the back seat. This car's leaving, my foot's on the gas, and I'm literally laying flat with the seat in the back. Broke the lugs in the back of a G-body seat. So I get it, man.
Yeah. That's why when I took that car down to 10 Soldier, I told Jason, I said, hey, put a bar across the back of this thing to hold me up, because it won't hold.
No,
it will not.
No, I did the same thing. I did the same thing with the Grand National. I didn't want to put a cage in it, but I did.
Yeah.
And it was for that reason. I knew I was already paranoid about breaking the seat, so then I would start hanging onto the steering wheel, and then you start bending the steering wheel, and I said, that's it. I got to have a cage in the car, and I never broke a seat after that because we put a support bar behind the seat, so it actually worked out pretty good. But no, I feel your challenges, but now your 700 is it's definitely been one of the most reliable 700s I've ever seen. That's for sure. Because we do them. I don't like to do them for the same reason that Dion doesn't like to do them. They're hit or miss, man. I mean, you get one like yours that you can't destroy, and then you get another one that it comes out 10 times to get it right.
Well, not only that, but people don't understand that. Just like you were explaining, just like you were explaining with the TV cable, how important that is. People don't realize it's not a kick down cable. It's not like the old Turbo 350s where all it does is just make it downshift. That's not what that thing is intended to do.
It's not what it does. No,
And so if you don't have those right, just like you're going to come up and help me get this one right.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's not right, it won't last.
No, I don't care. I can do the best job in the world on it. If you put it in and the TV cable geometry is not correct, it'll be lucky to make it around the block. And a 700, you can get by with some of that. And the reason you can is because when they built it, they blessed it with lots of clutches.
Yeah.
A 204R, they made the power flow. It's closer to a Turbo 400 than anything else. So they made a really nice, lightweight power flow. So they're very strong mechanically. The problem is they didn't put enough clutches in them, so they won't take more than one slip. I mean, if you apply any power to it slipping, they'll fail. And a 700, they have enough clutches, they'll get by with some of that.
See, we've actually added clutches to the high gear drum in mine.
Yeah, we'll do
I
the
think
same-
it's
do the
got
same
9.
thing. Yeah, 9. This in here, when we get done with, it'll be 8. But we'll do exactly the same thing. We'll put a band in it that's about a half-inch wider, and things like that. But to give it, but it's still, even then, it doesn't have as many clutches in it as a 700R4 does. But the gear ratio spread's much better, and then you have a .67 overdrive. So when you get into overdrive, you get an extra 200 or 300 RPMs at cruise that you won't get out of a 700R4.
Right.
So it works out really well. It's really a good transmission.
I'll take your word for it.
It's a love-hate, man. But I tell you, it's a good unit. I promise you it is.
So part of the hassle of dealing with 204Rs is that you have to make some of your own parts.
A lot of my own parts, like this right here, we actually cut out the factory shaft, okay, and then we make this billet shaft, and then we reattach it to this drum because this is the most failing point in a 204R, and we're the only ones in the industry that do it anymore. So everyone that goes out of here has to have this drum, and then there are other parts too. This is just the most critical part, and so everyone that we touch gets 4 or 5 parts that we actually have to make here. So it just makes it just makes the process a little tougher. That's all.
This is why Dion said, maybe you should just take this to Lonnie.
Because he's smarter than me. That's why. Here's another one. This here is an overdrive ring gear. Okay, we take a factory ring gear, we cut the back of the ring gear off, and we attach a 4340 plate because this point right here in a factory overdrive planet is a fail point. So we put a piece of 4340 in there so we don't have to deal with that. And then what else we got here? Pistons. That's a direct clutch piston. That 204R comes with a stamped steel piston. So then they have a ring on it. Well, the ring will fold over and cause clutch problems. So we actually make a billet aluminum piston to replace the direct clutch piston, so that way we don't have cracking and breaking and the folding over of a little stamped steel part. It's same thing with the forward clutch. The forward clutch, we do the same thing. It also uses one of the drop-in rings. We've had trouble where they actually bend over at the end and they'll make the clutch fail. So we make these that go in there.
You make this stuff all in-house.
All in-house. This band, this band here is a band we take out of another transmission. We cut it down and re-weld the actual end, the pin end on the end of it, and then we send it out and have it relined with no oil slots, because for about 4 or 5 years no one made a band for the transmission. So this is real labor intensive, and we hate doing it, but it has to be done.
So I feel pretty confident that when I get this thing back in that Biscayne, I've probably got one of the best 204R transmissions that money could buy.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. We've actually put them in a street application, and some people don't know the difference, but I'm going to explain it. They'll handle an honest 1,000 horsepower. But that 1,000 horsepower is not going to the racetrack and putting 15 passes on every weekend in the bracket. They won't handle that. What they'll handle is the guy with a 1,000 horsepower car that occasionally goes to the track, that does more driving and burning rubber. They will honestly handle 1,000 horsepower in that application. If you're putting 300 passes on a year, it's not the right transmission. It's like I said, street guy, goes to the track, maybe puts 15, 20, 30 passes on a season, but puts 3,000 or 4,000 street miles on it. It's a great transmission for that application.
Yeah, it's not your bracket transmission or
No.
something you're going to put in a dragster with 1,000 horsepower. And,
No.
it's not that transmission.
No, and that's when people spit out that number, that's what gets misunderstood. Is it'll handle 1,000 horsepower.
How many times?
Yeah, when we've beaten the snot out of it, and and putting 300 passes on it a year. No, it's not that transmission. It's the best lightweight 4-speed overdrive that fits everything. We use adapters. We put them in small block Fords. We put them behind Mopar guys buy a lot of them. Because,
really?
Yeah, they'll fit the tunnel. Nothing else will fit an A-body tunnel. An old Chrysler A-body tunnel.
Right.
So they'll use a lot of them. Some of the Mustang guys are going away from the over or the AOD and the street cars because this transmission will fit the tunnel. So we set them up with an adapter where you can use a reed belt to bolt it directly to the back of a small block Ford or a mod motor or a Coyote. And like I said, if you put the transmission in the right application, it's really a hard transmission to beat because the gear ratios are perfect, and it's got a really nice steep overdrive, so you can run a lot of gear. And you just have to put it in the application that it needs to be in. And if you do, it's probably one of my favorite overdrives for a street car, which I run in my '67 Buick. I still have one of my '67 Buick. So, but no, it's really a good transmission. But it's a lot of people don't understand how involved it is to make parts for them when we're the only people left doing it.
Right.
5 years ago we had 3 or 4 places doing it. Now, unfortunately, they have all closed, and so now not only do we have to make them for ourselves,
you're now making them for
for
others.
everybody. So I mean, no matter who you go to, and there's good builders in the country, but no matter who you go to, if you get billet parts, the billet parts came from us because we're the only one left doing it, and so we just have to do them in quantity. So it's a great little transmission, but we make a lot of parts for them, so it consumes a lot of time here. And we build about 20 a month ourselves. So if we do 20 here, then we have to make all these parts for 20 transmissions, and then there's probably well-known builders in the country. I'm going to say probably 8 to 10 that do 204Rs. So we have to make parts for them as well. So it's a constant battle trying to keep the parts for us, and also keep parts out there for them as well.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the shop. So we're out here tonight working on the Biscayne a little bit. I'm pretty excited about this. I'm really excited to get this transmission back, hopefully by this coming weekend. Lonnie said he's going to bring it up here and help us put it back in the car and get the TV cable all situated to make sure this thing works as it should. I have full confidence that Lonnie is going to hook me up and do everything he can to make sure this thing is right as rain right out of the box. In other news, some of you may have already realized that the website has been completely redesigned and is back up and running, and the giveaway on the Biscayne is live as of last night at midnight. So if you go to the website, you're going to notice that it looks totally different. Believe me, it's my website. It just looks a little bit nicer. And the Biscayne giveaway is all laid out. All the rules and everything is all on the website. You can check it out. And I haven't honestly had much time to even look at it myself yet. Vicky and Robert, my merch guy, has been working on that. And while I've been on the road, last night, Kenny and I just got back from Detroit, Michigan. We actually went up and got the Monte Carlo and brought it back from the Detroit Autorama. You're going to see that in the next video. You're also going to see me bring the 55 Chevy home. It's done at House of Pearls, and they need it out of their shop. And so I've got to make room here for the 55, and I'd like to bring Dad and Denny out maybe tomorrow night or the night after to reveal the car to them so they can see it for the first time. That's going to be really exciting. Anyway, once we get done moving cars around the next couple of days, we're going to get this transmission back from Lonnie down at Extreme Automatics, and we're going to get back on the Biscayne. Now, if you haven't really paid much attention to this car, it is a 71,000 original mile car from California with all its original chrome and sheet metal. This car is extremely nice. It is absolutely rust-free. It is a 388 small block Chevy in it currently. We're going to make some upgrades to that. I think we're going to do a little single plane intake swap. I've got a nitrous kit here from Nitrous Express we're going to put on it. We're going to get the transmission back from Lonnie down at Extreme Automatics, and we're going to get to testing this thing. I can't wait to see what I can get this thing to go. I think it's going to be a whole ton of fun seeing what this thing does with the nitrous kit turned on. I've also got some exciting news. CVF has come on board as a presenting sponsor for this giveaway, and they're going to supply me with a brand new billet serpentine kit for this car so that we can put air conditioning on it and keep the power steering. And it's going to be so nice. It's going to be just like the kit that we put on my Malibu, and we put one on Billy's 55. We put one on just about everything. There's one on my Monte Carlo as well. Super nice stuff. Super nice stuff. I've already got the air conditioning kit ordered. It's in at Jegs, but we're going to put air conditioning on this thing. We're going to get this thing all tuned up with a single plane intake and a nitrous kit from Nitrous Express, and we're going to have a whole bunch of fun. So anyway, guys, get to the website, theoldmansgarage.shop. You can figure out your plan of attack on how you want to win this thing. It's a really nice car. It's going to be the ultimate drag and drive starter kit, sponsored by CVF Racing and the Old Man's Garage. Good luck to everybody. I can't wait for everybody to see the next couple of videos. I'm really excited. This is going to be a lot of fun. Putting the Monte Carlo back together, putting the 55 back together, and doing all the bolt-ons on the Biscayne. Good night, everybody.